close to an unspecified city in the north of England. The climate, though generally hostile, has been unseasonably warm and dry, which is an unexpected treat for those who participate in the battle of man against nature, tilling the soil in the small area of cultivation known as the allotments. Where the fire brigade are currently extinguishing a blaze that has all but consumed a small hut. Eric, an elderly allotment holder with the sharp, considering eye of a blackbird, approaches.
Is the fire out now?
Well, we're just damping down, making sure it doesn't flare up again.
Only, I was wondering, while you've got your roses out, could you just give my fruit cage a quick sprinkle? Because that wouldn't count under the hosepipe ban, would it?
Sod off before I turn the hose on you, Grandad.
Perhaps more of a magpie, Eric. An opportunist as well as a keen observer.
Hey, yes, there's another thing. This is an allotment, not a small holding. There's no reason why there should be meat in that shed. The rules are quite clear, you know. No barbecues.
An opportunist with a nose for dead meat, apparently. Which might prove an asset in this treacherous environment. So perhaps, as we observe this intriguing species, the dramatis personae of the detective story, we should consider Eric more of a carrion crow.
Oh, bloody hell, he's right.
And so, this becomes a case for Detective Chief Inspector Alma Blair, the Alpha Detective, and her Sergeant Jason Trotter, the slightly dim sidekick.
Yeah, we're about ETA, what, just in 5 minutes?
Alma is the passenger, as befits her status as the queen of the beasts, the prowling lioness. Jason is her driver, the lowly jackal who survives on the scraps she leaves him. Alma is local, on familiar hunting grounds. Jason is known to the rest of the pride as a soft, southern prat.
Left, yes, left.
Sorry, Gov, sorry.
Sorry, boss, I better go.
Alma has worked her way up through the ranks, proving herself every step of the way. Jason is a graduate on the fast track who fell into a convenient vacancy. His ambition is to become the alpha male. Her ambition is to catch criminals.
Well, what's it like then, Cranby?
Do you ever venture outside the city centre, Jason? No.
Well, I can't help not being from round here. And now we've got baby Georgia, there's not much chance for exploring.
Cranby used to have a pit. Any bloke who wasn't a miner was a farm labourer. Now it's pensioners and commuters and screen jockeys.
Well, not the sort of people who end up getting murdered.
Except that one of them has.
And so, we return, like a rat to the back door of a restaurant, to the scene of the crime, where Brian Masters, the deputy chairman of the allotment committee, is demonstrating his value to the investigation, like a peacock spreading his fan.
But I'm telling you, I'm a special constable. You can let me through.
Police Constable Sparks, a willing workhorse in the murder mystery, has seen too many male courtship displays to fall for Brian, the wannabe detective.
I'm more than just a special constable. I'm the deputy chairman of the allotments committee.
See that tape? It says crime scene, do not cross.
You hear that, Brian? Looks like you swapped one bossy woman for another.
What's that about bossy women? Has my reputation spread all the way to Cranby?
No, ma'am. I mean, yes, ma'am.
Crime scene team here already?
Well, they were just down the road on a burglary.
And you are?
Brian Masters. Special constable Brian Masters.
Don't be modest, Brian. He's the deputy chairman of the allotment committee as well. And I'm Eric Ollerenshaw.
Well, Brian, we'll need to have a chat with you later. Come on, Jason.
But I discovered the body. Well, sort of. I smelled it.
Well done, sir. And we'll be needing a statement from you in due course, but for now, if you just...
Jason!
Inside the allotment shed, our team jockey for position. Even Alma has to concede superiority to Joe, the crime scene manager, who runs her empire with the lethal grace and distinctiveness of a snow leopard. Watch how the women behave towards each other. Rivals? Not quite.
Bloody hell, it smells like a rugby club barbecue in here. What have you got for me, Joe?
Oh, female deceased, obviously.
But not for the obvious reason.
Depends what you mean by obvious.
Well, usually when you've got a dead body at the heart of a raging inferno, you're looking at smoke inhalation, but I'm guessing that might not be what's going on here. Jason, you're supposed to be a bright lad. Any idea what Joe and me are talking about?
Could it be something to do with the fact that the victim's pinned to the ground by what looks like the remains of a garden fork?
He's getting the hang of this, Alma.
That's where you say you're learning from the best, Jason.
I'm learning from the best, Guff.
I suppose we'll have to wait for the post-mortem to find out whether she was still alive when the fire took hold.
Either way, it's a pretty grim way to go.
What are the guys with the big halls saying?
To me, nothing. I'm not nearly high status enough for that.
Jason, go and find a fire officer who'll stick his neck out.
Well, OK, but shouldn't I be...
Jason!
Jason thinks about challenging the alpha, but realizes she won't lose face in front of the other female. Instead, he flounces off. Noisily.
I know he can't help it, but he reminds me of my Robbie, and God knows it's bad enough living with a teenager without having to work with one too. So, is there anything useful you can tell me at this stage?
I don't know about useful, but judging by the smell, I'd say she was probably a vegetarian.
Oh, TMI, Joe, TMI.
The lower status males huddle together for support.
Looks like accelerant, yeah.
When will you know?
Your guess is as good as mine, lad.
Unfortunately, emerging from the crime scene without Jason for cover means Alma has nowhere to hide.
Swear to God these suits are getting smaller.
You keep thinking that, if it makes you feel better.
DCI Blair, Special Constable Brian Masters reporting for duty. I think I might be able to put a name to the victim.
Oh, aye? And how's that, Brian?
Well, I know who said that is. So I thought I'd try a phone, and there's nothing. No ringing on the line, no voicemail, which is consistent with her phone being in the fire, right?
Oh, so you're a special forensic scientist too, Brian?
Well, it was on CSI Miami.
Stop rolling your eyes like that, Joe. The wind'll change and you'll stay that way. Brian, a word of advice. Jo knows many undetectable ways to kill you, and she likes to try them out on people who mention TV forensic science shows.
Well, with all due respect, you're the one who asked how come I think I can ID the body.
Brian, you are really dicing with death, with all due respect.
OK, Brian, spit it out. Who do you think our victim might be?
Jenna Morrison. That's her shed.
And where does she live, this Jenna Morrison?
At number 3, the Green, back down on the main street by the church. She mostly works from home, I think.
Thanks, Brian. You've been very helpful. Now, where's Jason?
Over there, with Fireman Sam.
Detective Sergeant Trotter! Trot over here, would you, lad?
You have so got to stop that, Alma.
Why? All he ever talks about is that kid of his. He's got about a week to sort himself out with a football team to support, and another week to learn the names of the first team squad before somebody lands him with a nickname from hell.
What is it, Gov?
Any news?
They reckon it was arson, all right.
Good. Now, I want you to take Brian here to the pub, get some local colour.
Well, OK, but where are you going to be?
We've got a tentative victim ID. I'm going to go round to her house to check she's not dusting her knickknacks.
Well, you don't want me with you?
Division of labour, Jason. This is a death knock. They don't teach you how to do that at university.
And so we find ourselves in the predominantly male habitat of the village pub, where Jason is forced to take on the traditional protective colouring of the detective sergeant who has to buy the drinks.
Tell me about Jenna Morrison, Brian.
You'll be wanting to know if she had any enemies, that sort of thing.
Right, did she?
Well, only one I can think of, but only need one, don't you?
Meanwhile, Alma is assuming the posture of the submissive beta female.
Mrs. Morrison,
That's right, love.
I'm Detective Chief Inspector Alma Blair. Can I have a word? Inside.
A word? With me? What about?
It's about Jenna, your daughter.
I know who Jenna is. Jenna, love, there's a lady copper here asking about you.
Jenna's at home. Here.
Of course she's here. It's where she lives.
What's the matter? Has Mr. Patel been complaining about my car blocking his deliveries again?
Note the apparent artlessness of the femme fatale, whose arrival has set the big cat among the ostriches.
So, who's the one, Brian?
I've had plenty of opportunity to observe the dynamic between this pair. My wife and I split up a while back after I got made redundant. Since then, I've been spending most of my time down on the allotment. You see, there's always company there.
Aye, he's right. The allotments stop us turning into miserable, lonely old gits. Used to be, the allotments were where men went to escape from their wives. But these days, the women are the ones taking over. All them middle-class lasses with their artichokes and asparagus.
We were talking about Jenna.
A case in point. She were brought up here, Jenna, but you'd never know it. Head full of funny ideas.
What? Celeriac and salsify?
Not just vegetables there, Brian.
Which brings me to what I was about to tell you, Jason. You wanted to know whether Jenna had any enemies.
Felicity Hall.
Oh, I was just coming to that, Eric.
Maybe so, Brian. But my lad here hasn't got all day while you go around the houses.
Who's Felicity Hall?
She's the chairman of the Allotment Society. Lives up in the big house, Cranby Grange.
In other words, the leader of the pack. Surprising that we've not seen her yet.
And why is Felicity Hall Jenna Morrison's enemy? Did they have a falling out over the French beans? Or?
Don't be daft. You don't murder people over French beans.
You don't say. I thought you were going to take your matter to Felicity when she accused you of buying your prize-winning leeks at the farmer's market.
There's no need to bring that up, Brian. You know as well as I do she didn't have a shred of evidence.
Well, can we get back to the point, gentlemen? If it wasn't allotment business, what did Jenna and Felicity fall out over?
Well, it was Hugo, wasn't it?
But who's Hugo?
He's Felicity's son. He's just moved back in with her. His marriage broke up.
His marriage broke up on account of he was giving Jenna a good seeing to in her shed on the allotment. That's the top and bottom of it.
And Felicity was pretty unhappy about it.
Not least because it's against the rules.
Now that sympathy is off the agenda, Alma is free to return to her alpha status.
And you've no idea why anybody else would be in your shed?
None. It's not like I keep any valuables in there, just my tools.
Brian Masters said he tried to ring you, but your phone was dead.
Yes, I cancelled my contract a few days ago and bought a new pay-as-you-go.
Why was that?
Well, it's a better deal given my pattern of usage.
Really?
The lioness is always quick to spot suspicious behaviour. It's how she stays on top. And, in the detective story, the lover and suspicious behaviour go hand in hand. Yeah, that was better, wasn't it?
Excuse me. DCI Blair?
Alma?
What have you got?
Looks like that tentative ID might be wrong.
Tell me something I don't know.
When they moved the body, they found a bunch of keys.
And?
A key fob, a big metal letter F.
Anybody ID'd it yet?
One of the allotment holders says it belongs to a woman called Felicity Hall.
Anything known?
She's the chairman of the Allotment Society, which apparently she ran rather like Mussolini ran Italy.
Oh, something to be said for getting the trains to run on time. Thanks, Joe. So, Jenna, any bright ideas as to why Felicity Hall got herself murdered in your shed?
Good heavens. Unless I'm much mistaken, that was a cliffhanger. Humans, like most other animals, are happiest when they are on their home territory. When they are forced into strange places, they always seek out environments that remind them of their own turf. Which is why Detective Sergeant Jason Trotter is still in the pub. A classic habitat of the detective story.
Are you still in the pub, Jason?
I am, Gov.
Have they got a back room or an upstairs room? We need to do some serious interviewing and I'm not waiting till the cows come home for a mobile incident room.
Well, I don't know, Gov.
I'll be there in 10 minutes.
Meanwhile, alpha female DCI Alma Blair is very much in her natural environment. In a police car with a suspect.
Oh, this is crazy. Nobody who knows me would think for a nanosecond that I would kill Felicity.
Well, that's the thing about murder, Jenna. Everybody starts out innocent until suddenly they're not. Everything can change in a matter of minutes.
You really think I might have killed Felicity because we had a row about me shagging her son?
Save it till we sit down with my sergeant.
Is this really the world you live in?
Trust me, love. You don't have the stomach for the world I live in.
Eric is a man who knows a thing or two about familiar territory, so he has led the team to the Masonic Hall, a sacred place of ritual and rank.
Are you sure we're all right in here?
Could have gone down the allotments and used one of the sheds.
I'm all for making the most of the sheds while we've still got them, Brian.
What do you mean, while we've still got them?
Felicity wants to demolish all the sheds and replace them with lean-tos so that everybody can see what everybody else is up to.
Felicity says if we can't behave like grown-ups, we don't deserve to be treated like grown-ups.
I'm 72 years old and I'm entitled to a nut where I can sit and read the paper and have my wood stove burning on a cold winter's afternoon. If I want to be treated like a toddler, I can stop at home with the wife.
It won't happen, Eric, I promise you.
I don't want a lean-to. I don't want everybody knowing my secrets.
Secrets?
It takes a lifetime to work out how to grow leeks like mine, lad. Have you got kids?
I've got a little girl, Georgia. Oh, she's a cracker. Do you want to see a picture?
Nah, lad. The point I'm making is that as a father, you've got a legacy to pass on. Well, my legacy is my secret formula for growing leeks that are the envy of every other allotment holder he can be. And I'm not letting the old bloody world in on the secret, whatever Felicity says about sheds.
Well, why don't you just vote Felicity off the committee if she winds you all up so much?
Because her family owns the head lease on the allotment land. If we don't dance to Felicity's tune, she'll just serve us all with notice to quit come next Lady Day.
Well, actually, I'm surprised she's not been round already reading You're Not the Right Act about trampling all over our lovely weed-free paths.
I don't think so, Brian. I noticed her car parked round the back when I came down to the allotment earlier. You can't miss it. It's one of them big, ugly SUVs. Like she was going to cross the Scottish Highlands off-road instead of popping down to Mr. Patel's for a packet of crumpets.
Well, we'll have to see what we can pick up on the CCTV.
CCTV? You've been in the big city too long, lad. This is a low crime zone. We don't have CCTV here.
And so Alma arrives in a sanctum of male power.
Gov!
How will she handle this challenge to her status?
Jenna? You're supposed to be dead, love. Did you know?
While Alma is considering how to negotiate her way through the Masonic Hall, another top cat is pushing the lower status men around.
The area I'm most interested in is underneath the body.
Oh, I'll give you the word soon as it's cool enough for your crime scene technicians to start work.
Oh, thanks. And if you could keep your lads away from that patch, that'll save me having to castrate them.
That's always a plus.
Into this scene of assertive female power comes Hugo Hall, another feckless male who wants to take charge. Let's watch closely and see if he can raise his status above that of suspect or lover.
Excuse me.
Sorry, sir, but this is...
PC Sparks may be a bit of a cart horse, but she's still hard to fool. And Hugo is the man with the motives after all. Money and sex, always up there.
My name's Hugo Hall. My mother is the chairman of the Allotment Society.
Oh, can you wait here a moment, sir?
What's going on here? This is a hell of a lot of fuss over a shed set on fire. There's more to it, isn't there? Oh, my God, nothing's happened to Jenna, has it?
Now, who was the white tea with 3
I've got
sugars?
to step outside. Jenna, I need you to wait here with Sergeant Trotter till I get back. Save your breath. Jason, a word. Today, Jason, you get to be the good cop. See what you can get out of her about her relationship with Felicity. I'm off to break the news to the new lord of the manor.
Gov.
With any social group, it's always a question of hierarchy. When the Queen isn't on the scene, who runs the show? Is it the busybody, the rookie, the wannabe? Or does the femme fatale knock them all for 6?
So, if Jenna's not dead, who is?
3 guesses. You only need one. Who's the only person with keys to all the sheds?
I'm guessing that would be Felicity.
Miss Chatelaine? Who else?
Now then, Jenna. She might run the place with a rod of steel, but everybody knows Cranby allotments are the creme de la creme. We've got the longest waiting list in the county for plots.
Really? So how come you've only been back a year and you've got a plot of your own, Jenna?
Oh, well, it's complicated.
You forget something?
No, nothing like that.
But what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost.
I didn't even get out of the village. The bloody allotments are crawling with police.
The most precarious and the most stressful position in any social group are the ones regarded as the outsiders. On the allotments, that role has been assigned to Mark and Claire. And in a detective story, any new characters introduced at this point must be suspects. Even if with names like Mark and Claire, they are obviously Guardian readers.
There are cops all over the allotments, and there's crime scene tape round Jenna's plot.
What are you saying?
You said you came running home like a scalded cat because Jenna's shed was on fire, but there's way too much police activity for a bit of vandalism.
But I don't understand.
Are you sure you didn't hear anything, see anybody?
Of course I didn't. I'd have said...
Well, there's cops everywhere.
What are we going to do?
What can we do? We'll just have to sit tight and act innocent. And meanwhile, you get your ass down the pub and find out what's going on.
And now, we have an opportunity to observe the boss running rings round a younger male who thinks he's her superior.
You understand we can't be certain at this point?
Everything points that way. Her car's here. She's the key holder for all the sheds, and those are her keys.
I'm very sorry, but I'm afraid I do have to ask some questions in case of suspicious death.
I thought it was Jenna when I realised something bad had happened. Not my mother.
You and Jenna, you were seeing each other?
Stupid. We used to go out with each other when we were teenagers, but when she came back...
You picked up where you left off?
My marriage was going through a bad patch, and Jenna was...
A handy shoulder to cry on.
And then it all got out of hand. My mother walked in on us one afternoon. She completely lost the plot.
She gave Jenna a piece of her mind?
Oh, my mother was never backward at coming forward. She told Jenna she'd have her evicted from the allotments just for starters. But Jenna gave as good as she got. Everybody on the allotments got a grandstand view.
And few things attract the attention of the tribe like a pair of females wrestling for power.
That must have been embarrassing.
I don't mind being embarrassed. I'm in PR. I spent half my life being embarrassed by my clients. Where it got out of hand was that somebody sent my wife an anonymous letter.
Ah.
Now this. I'll never have the chance to put things right.
That's the trouble with murder. You never know it's coming, so you never have the chance to straighten things out.
Murder? And so, motive is dragged out into the open like a slain gazelle.
I take it you'll be the new owner of all this?
I suppose, but what's that got to do with my mother's murder?
Nothing, you'd think. But passions seem to run high round here when it comes to fruit and veg.
Oh, you don't know the half of it.
And once more, we see how the mating rituals of the group can cause discord and resentment.
I never broke a single rule, Brian.
Not until you had your wicked way with Hugo in your shed.
Well, there's nothing in the rules that says you can't have sex in your shed.
Well, I think it's covered by 16B. Behaviour likely to bring the allotment society into disrepute may be considered an eviction offence by a disciplinary subcommittee of the main committee.
Into disrepute. Into the 21st century, more like.
That still doesn't explain how you got your allotment when there's a waiting list.
There's a rule that said you can sign over half your plot to a third party if it becomes too much work for you. It was set up to protect outcodgers who couldn't manage to get the whole plot up to scratch anymore. Then, when they pop the clogs, or give up their half, the sitting tenant takes preference over somebody on the waiting list. Jenna here chatted up one of her granddad's old pals and got her hands on his half of the plot.
And Felicity was furious.
Why was she furious? Technically, Jenna didn't do anything wrong.
Well, Felicity had been buttering Arthur up for ages. She promised one of them posh incomers that she'd sort him out with a plot. Then Jenna come along and whipped it out from under her. It made her look right stupid.
A classic example of the younger female scenting weakness in the older leader and exploiting it.
But the rest of us were more than happy about Jenna taking over because she's still one of us.
For all that she was Cranby born and bred, Felicity never understood that incomers are different.
But we can't live in the past, Eric. You've got to deal with the world as it is, not as you'd like it to be.
Change for change's sake. It's daft. If it's not broken, why bother messing about with it?
Fascinating though Charles Darwin would have found this evolutionary discussion, the alpha female is back.
Well, somebody decided it was time for a change. You're going to need a new chairman of the Allotment Society because it looks like somebody's murdered Felicity Hall.
What?
This is the part where you all make a statement telling us about your movements this morning, and if you can think of anybody who had any kind of grudge against Felicity, this would be the time to tell us. We don't look kindly on folk that try to hold things back in a murder inquiry.
You want a list of names? My dad fought the war to stop that kind of thing.
Who do you think you are, Eric? And Frank? Just do what you're told for once. Of course we'll cooperate, Chief Inspector. I can give you a list of the allotment holders. You'll want to speak to all of them, I imagine.
We will. Jason, we've got a murder to investigate.
Let's go.
Where are we going, Gov?
Sounds like that lot are having the usual arguments about tradition and change.
It's like the allotments are a metaphor for the bigger picture.
A metaphor, eh? And there was me thinking they were a handy way to put food on the table when times get as tough as they have now.
Well, that too, obviously, but then you get the question of basic crops versus luxury items. Are you feeding your family or pandering to some middle-class notion of back to nature?
I'm old school, me. I get me veg from the market like my mother did before me.
Well, it's an appealing thought, though. Growing your own fruit and veg, working the land, in touch with the soil. We could make it a family thing. Something we could all do together in the evenings and on weekends. I mean, Georgia could have her own little vegetable bed. She'd learn where the food on the table comes from.
God, you don't have evenings and weekends on a murder inquiry. You get your hands dirty enough dealing with the scum we have to put away without signing up for an allotment. Not to mention, you wouldn't last 5 minutes with the kind of politicking that goes on down there. Just stick to clawing your way up the greasy pole at work and leave the allotments to the horny-handed sons of toil and the lasses who lay the compost bins with copies of The Guardian.
If you say so, Gov. But none of us is going anywhere if you don't tell us where we're going.
We're going to see a man about some tomatoes.
Which may or may not be a metaphor. In the animal kingdom, there are a handful of primary directives that supersede everything else. Food, shelter, that kind of thing. In the detective story, it's the same principle. Suspects, motives, interviews. Nobody understands that better than the alpha lioness of the Pride, a.k.a. Detective Chief Inspector Alma Blair.
Anyway, never mind all your theoretical motives about fear of change, Jason. We're cops. We like a nice, concrete motive. What are the nice, concrete motives again?
Jealousy, fear, self-preservation.
That's not a bad start. But you missed out the most concrete of them all. Greed. Follow the money, Jason. Follow the money.
Nature, bred in tooth and claw, otherwise known as the city market, where women have been known to come to blows over the last packet of bacon scraps.
It's nice to be on home ground again. These trips to the country are all very well, but we know where we are in the city, right, Jason?
But if we're following the money, why are we here instead of Hugo Hall's PR firm? I mean, surely he's where the money's going. He's going to inherit a tidy whack. That flat alone has got to be worth, what, the thick end of $500,000? And then there's the allotment land. You get outline planning permission and sell that for development. You'd be sitting pretty.
And we'll get to Hugo in good time. But the trouble with you, Jason, is you've forgotten what life's like for the little people down at the bottom.
I'm not exactly a fat cat, Gov.
Oh, but you will be one day, Jason. You'll leave an old fogey like me in the dust. But there's still life in the old dog yet.
But sometimes you make me feel like I've fallen into a sketch from one of those old comedy shows my grand loves. The Two Ronnies or Monty Python, one of that lot.
You had a hole in the road. You were lucky.
You're not going to give Rory Bremner many sleepless nights, are you? Look, lad, when I say follow the money, I'm not necessarily talking about big piles of cash. When you're at the bottom of the heap, when you're coppering up every week to put food on the table and keep the house warm, a little bit of liquidity goes a long way. Doesn't take much to make you desperate.
And you think Felicity was threatening somebody's fragile financial ecosystem?
I do.
But based on what, exactly?
Just something Hugo said. That he wouldn't be the only one regretting the last conversation was a quarrel.
Just as the native red squirrel has been displaced by the grey squirrel, so successive waves of immigrants have staked their claim to the bottom of the employment heap. Hard-working and smart, they don't linger long on their way to the top of the tree. Take Thomas, the village Pole. That classic suspect of the Golden Age detective story, Johnny Foreigner. Prime suspect.
You got a family? Well, you must have friends, right?
Thomas Wozniacki?
That's me. Somebody sent you. You want the best deli in the city? You found it.
I'm not after your produce, Thomas. I'm Detective Chief Inspector Alma Blair, and this is Detective Sergeant Jason Trotter.
Okay. Why are you here?
Can you get someone to keep an eye on your store?
What do you think?
It's either that or shut down, son, because I need to talk to you, and I need to talk to you now. See, that wasn't so hard, was it?
You would have done well under the communists.
Behave yourself, or I'll let Jason here show you his baby pictures.
So, what is it that has happened in Cranby that brings you here to me? I know it cannot be my family, because then you would be kinder.
The most efficient predators are those who prepare for the kill. Sometimes that means stalking a prey that's unaware of their presence. Sometimes it means lulling the prey into a false sense of security. And sometimes it means going straight for the jugular.
We've had a report that you had a threatening conversation with Felicity Hall, the chairman of the Allotment Society.
Oh, you're kidding me, right? They send out 2 detectives because I have a stupid row with a stupid woman? No wonder criminals laugh at the police here. This is how you waste your time.
You don't deny you had a row? That you threatened Mrs. Hall?
I told her what I thought of her. Yeah, how is that a threat? I mean, she has the money, she has the power.
What did you say to her?
I said she needed to find something better to do than bossing grown men around. She didn't like that, but I didn't expect police.
You said if she made your children suffer, you would make her suffer twice as bad.
I don't remember. Maybe. You know how it is. You lose temper, you say stuff. It doesn't mean you're going to do it.
True. So what was the row about?
Stupid rules.
It's against the rules to sell what you grow on your allotment, isn't it?
I know this, and I'm not stupid. I don't break the rule. I don't sell my own stuff.
But you found a way around the rule, didn't you?
Everybody knows there are a lot of old men who grow way more than they can possibly eat. When I first get my allotment, I tell this to Brian. What do they do with all this food, I say?
And what did Brian say?
Barter, he say. You can't sell, but you can trade. He say Eric hasn't paid to have his car service for 20 years. He say Arthur had his whole house decorated every 3 years and never paid a penny.
So you can swap your produce for services?
So I figure if you can swap for services, you can swap for other things, right? So I start to swap my organic vegetables for other organic vegetables from other allotment holders. I give them a kilo of tomatoes. They give me a kilo of tomatoes in exchange.
Just like chimpanzees. You pick my fleas, I'll pick yours.
100% profit and not breaking the rules. And this drive her crazy, Felicity.
And so you had a row?
The stupid cow was threatening me, not the other way around. She says she was going to get my tomatoes DNA tested to prove I am selling my own produce on this stall. And when she proves she is right, she will have me thrown off the allotments.
And that would be a disaster for you, I'm guessing. Your margins must be so tight. Having the allotment veg is what makes a difference for you, isn't it?
You were right. So it was a serious threat for me. But then the committee said, no, she must not do the thing with the DNA because it would cost too much. I was happy.
But that wasn't the end of it, was it?
Hugo?
I thought it was you. When I saw the police tape and realised it was more than just a fire, I thought it was you.
I'm sorry about Felicity. I know we fell out over you, but... How are you doing?
The most successful creatures in nature are the ones who learn quickly from experience. The ones who never learn are, of course, destined to stay at the bottom of the food chain, often ending up as dinner.
I don't think it's sunk in yet. But Jenna...
Yes?
Well, now she's gone. There's nothing to stop you coming over, is there? I could really use some company. I don't want to be alone right now.
Well, shouldn't you be with your children? Their grandmother's just died. You don't want them hearing about it on the local news.
I can't face it, Jenna. It's you I need.
Oh, I don't think so, Hugo. We had our fun, but I didn't sign up for this.
But Jenna, I left my family for you. I did it all for you.
No, Hugo. You did it all for you.
Miss Morrison, when you're ready.
Oh, I have to go now, Hugo. Go and see your children. Oh, just coming, officer.
Just as soon as she's finished with this plot twist.
There's more you're not telling us, Thomas.
Here. All right. So now you know everything, Mrs. Police.
Mrs. Police are quite like that. Dear Mr. Wozniacki, not very friendly, blah, 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 recent inspection, blah, blah, blah. Ah, here's the meat. Come before the committee to explain poor maintenance of your plot. Still after you, then.
I keep telling you, this is nothing. I have made no serious threat against this stupid woman. Why do you keep on about this? You must have proper crimes to solve.
Tell Thomas here what we're investigating.
There was a fire at the allotments this morning, Thomas.
What? You think I do this? You think I set fire to somebody's hut?
I never said anything about a hut.
What else is going to burn on the allotments? Just because I guess it is a hut doesn't mean you can blame me for this.
We're not that bothered about the hut, to be honest, Thomas. Tell him, Sergeant.
When the firemen got the blaze under control, they found a woman's body. Somebody murdered Felicity Hall, then set fire to the shed to cover their tracks.
Murdered her?
Oh, yes. No doubt about that. So, can you tell us your movements since you got out of bed this morning, ideally with at least 2 witnesses to all of them?
There's nothing the Queen Bee likes more than a willing drone further down the pecking order. Oh, bloody hell.
Who wrote this? It's more mixed metaphors than a football commentary.
And, PC Sparks does enough running around to keep the most demanding alpha happy.
So, when did you arrange to meet Mrs. Hall at your hut?
Are you not listening to me? We didn't have any arrangement. The last time I spoke to Felicity, half the allotment holders heard me.
You're saying you never spoke to Mrs. Hall after the 2 of you had your falling out?
That's right. You can check my phone records if you like.
Not that that would be much use if it was Felicity that phoned you.
Oh, for God's sake, Eric, whose side are you on anyway?
It's not about sides. I was only saying...
It's all right, Eric. I've got nothing to be worried about. Like I said, officer, I never spoke to Felicity again after we disagreed so publicly.
So, what was she doing in your shed if she wasn't meeting you there?
Well, trespassing, I suppose you'd have to call it.
Well, technically not. As the head lease landlord, she did have the right to make inspections, and as the chairman, she had a set of keys, which implies permission to have access, which I suppose I have now as the acting chairman.
Oh, for heaven's sake, Brian. All right, then. Sticking her nose in where it had no right to be would be my guess.
Or maybe she'd arranged to meet somebody else.
Well, I think she was probably looking for infringements. Reasons to report you to the committee, Jenna, to get you thrown off.
Well, thankfully, you're in charge now, Brian. And I'm sure you won't be wanting rid of me, will you?
Oh, definitely not. We have got big changes planned around here, but that's not one of them.
And you won't have Felicity putting a spoke in your wheel any longer. All change now, Brian.
Yeah, if I could just ask you, gentlemen, to take yourselves off now you've finished with your own statements.
And because we are just over halfway through the life cycle of the detective story, it's time for a quick recap before we get a crucial new piece of evidence that turns everything on its head.
I think you're barking up the wrong tree, Jason. I think Thomas was genuinely gobsmacked.
But you said yourself, his business is on a knife edge. Losing the allotment produce might have made the difference between survival and going under for him.
I suspect Thomas has been a bloody sight more resourceful than most of his neighbours. The grafters, the Pauls.
You don't think that's a little bit racist, Gov?
Is it racist if you say nice things about him? I thought it was just if you're having a go. DCI Blair.
Alma, it's Joe.
Ah, it's our fairy godmother, Jason. Auntie Jo bringing us good news. That's right, isn't it, Jo?
Depends on what you call good news. You know there's no CCTV in the village, apart from inside the shop and the pub, obviously.
Jason mentioned it, yeah.
But they have got a bus. The X342, to be precise.
What's buses got to do with it?
They've got CCTV on buses. It shows the pavement and the road around the bus, soft lad. You know that if you ever got on a bloody bus.
Try and get on a bus with a buggy and a baby.
Oh, what? You think our Robbie was born 15? So, what have you picked up, Joe?
I sent one of my lot after the X342, and he's grabbed a look at the digital files. Alma, we've got somebody running down the road away from the allotment at the crucial time.
Do we know who he is?
Not yet, but we're printing up some stills to take down the pub. It's not the greatest likeness, Alma, but if he's local, it's probably enough. Looks like you might get your man by bedtime.
Oh, that's what we like. A nice, straightforward, open and shut case, eh, Jason?
Well, just because he's running away doesn't mean he did it.
And it doesn't mean he didn't, either.
Open and shut. If only it was that straightforward. What our roaring lioness doesn't realise is that there are 2 more episodes to come. Fear stalks the herd when there's a predator on the loose. Fear is the very root of suspense in any detective story. It's bad enough when the threat comes from outside, but it's infinitely worse when the predator is one of the group. And if you're Detective Sergeant Jason Trotter, a subservient male who's always 2 steps behind the top cat detective, it's hard to escape.
Working a case like this, I get really uneasy about my Georgia.
I don't think the allotment slayer's going to be coming after your little lass, Jason. Not even if you get yourselves on the waiting list to grow your own lettuces.
No, I don't mean specifically, obviously. I mean in general. Like, what sort of world she's going to be growing up in? I mean, don't worry about Robbie.
The best thing I can do for Robbie is lock up as many of the evil bastards out there as I can. You do the best you can to keep them safe, and then it's out your hands.
In the pub, the rituals of the group are played out. That doesn't mean it's a danger-free zone. Sometimes the greatest threat comes from within. As Mark, the middle-class suspect, discovers, trapped in the corner with Eric, who likes to think of himself as the reservoir of tribal wisdom.
Unmistakable, the smell of burning flesh. To be honest, I was surprised the fireman didn't pick up on it.
Aye, poor Felicity.
You wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy.
Which she was, let's not forget.
Yeah, steady on, Eric. We had our differences, but I wouldn't have called her my enemy.
So, how long are the police going to be hanging around the allotments?
Well, they have to wait for the ground to cool so they can get all the forensic samples. I expect they'll be finished sometime tomorrow.
So we'll be able to get back to our plots?
I expect so. Why? You got something that needs harvesting urgently, then?
Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, the willing workhorse plods on, confounded by the flies buzzing round her head, otherwise known as the old biddies.
Do either of you ladies recognise this man?
Hey, Mark, is that you running down Percival Road?
Blaming Nora, what's going on? Oh!
Hey!
Jason, get up there! Pelican, look in the bloody doorway, he's getting away! Sparks, get after him! Oh, who the hell was that?
Mark Brennan, he lives down Rafferty Row with his partner Claire. They've got a couple of the old miners' cottages knocked through and an allotment.
Your uniformed lady policeman was waving a photo around, asking if anybody recognised the lad in it. And Nora over there, she said it were Mark.
And you said Crime Watch was a waste of time.
That picture could have been anybody, Nora.
Oh, get some ice and a towel from the barmaid.
It obviously wasn't just anybody, was it, Esme? It were Mark.
This'll be the last time he trims your hedge.
I'm sure I know my duty.
All this buzzing to and fro is very entertaining for the spectators. A little lightness to ease the growing tension of the investigation. But now it's time for the Lord of the Flies to take charge. Yes, that's more like it. A sustained metaphor with a point to it.
Sorry to interrupt, ladies. Am I right in thinking the officer was showing you a photograph of a man running away from the allotments?
A video capture, yes, that's what they call it on the telly. And Nora, straight out, shouted it was Mark without even asking the lad.
Running off like that, that's the action of a guilty man.
Not necessarily. He might just have been frightened. We all know about miscarriages of justice. They're never off the true crime channels.
We try to avoid them round here. So he's a neighbour of yours, this Mark?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Him and Claire live next door.
7 Rafferty Row. I could walk you round there since your sergeant's incapacitated.
Very kind of you, Brian, but Jason's not incapacitated, are you, lad? As the bleeding stops.
More or less.
Brian, can you give me the key for your allotment shed?
My shed?
I fancy doing my interviews down there, a bit of local colour. Yours is the one next to Jenna's, right?
On the church side, yes. Well, there you go. I'll need to see about getting Felicity's spare keys.
Oh, it might be easier to get a whole new set cut. Come on then, Jason, lad. We've got work to do.
Suspect last seen. Heading towards Woodland, over by the kids' playground. In Whistle Street. Over.
Right, grab a uniform and get round Mike Brennan's house and pick up the girlfriend. Bring her down the allotments. We'll talk to her there, see if the scene of the crime puts her off her stride.
Where will you be, Gav?
I'll meet you there. I fancy a poke around. You know me. Can never get enough of a crime scene. I'll see you at Brian's hut.
OK, Gav.
When the alpha female's away, the beta male comes out to play. Jason's still stubbornly trying to get in touch with his alpha male, which isn't easy with a blocked nose.
Oh, police.
Claire Baxter?
Yes, has something happened to Mark?
DS Trotter, this is PC Sparks. I'd like you to accompany me, please. My senior officer would like to interview you.
I don't understand that. I haven't done anything. Is this about the fire? I've not been near the allotments since Sunday. There's nothing I can tell you.
Nevertheless, Miss Baxter, my DCI wants to talk to you.
Well, why doesn't he come here and talk to me? It's just a bloody shed on an allotment. All this fuss is ridiculous.
Haven't you heard? This isn't about a bit of vandalism. This is a murder inquiry.
Murder? Who's been murdered?
Felicity Hall.
Felicity dead?
Yeah, and my DCI doesn't like to be kept waiting. She is in charge of this inquiry, so I'd like to put your coat on.
Where are you taking me?
Oh, not far, just down to the allotments.
The allotments?
Is that a problem?
Well, what if I say no?
Then I'll have to arrest you. Now, are you going to get your coat?
Hey! Is this your idea of respect for the dead? Oi! Police! Turn the music off or I'll have your boombox and your white van confiscated. That's better. What the heck's going on here? Who are you and what do you think you're playing at?
We're the Margolyes. I'm Declan.
I'm Roisin.
A woman was murdered here today. You don't think you might be a bit out of line with the loud music?
We're Irish, love. We call it a wake.
You're not Gerald Maguire's kids, are you?
Yeah, what is it to you if we are like?
For one thing, you'd be mortified at the two of you carrying on like plastic paddies when a woman was murdered here not a dozen hours ago.
She never showed no respect when our dad died. He wasn't cold in his grave when she was serving as a termination of tenancy.
Everything all right, DCI Blair?
Yeah, Roisin here was just explaining to me about the run-in with Felicity over the allotments.
I've told you both. Felicity was right. You can't inherit a plot.
Yeah, we just did what that Jenna did. We helped him out when he wasn't able to do it anymore, and he was going to sign half of it over to me, and then he had his last stroke, and he never got it done.
Felicity was right. According to the letter of the law, you can't inherit a plot.
Yeah, you said...
I said I thought the committee might be sympathetic in the circumstances, but Felicity was adamant.
Of course, now Felicity's not in the picture.
We never killed her, though.
Smoke, Alma.
I've other vices I prefer. Let me see that packet, though.
Hey,
Oh, Declan, your old man would be ashamed of you. He'd be embarrassed at the stupidity of offering them to a copper.
I got him on holiday.
What, you go on holiday to, Hungary? That is Hungarian, isn't it? If I get a search warrant for your shed, am I going to find a stash of fags and cheap vodka? nice shed, Brian. Very tidy, very organised. I like that in a man.
Are you really going to get a search warrant for the Margolyes shed?
I'll pass the info on to the relevant team in a few days, give them a chance to shift the stuff.
But isn't that a motive? I mean, what if Felicity knew about the smuggling?
What? You think that feckless pair could work themselves up to a murder?
Well, they're always playing those rebel songs, and the IRA weren't behind the door when it came to killing folk.
Bloody hell, Brian. You do live the quiet life out here, don't you? The Margolyes have the same relationship to the IRA as a kitten has to a lion. Get a grip. So, how long have you had your allotment?
Well, this is my third year. I'd been on the waiting list for 4 years. It came along at just the right time. My marriage had broken up and I was desperate for something to keep me active, body and mind.
3 years? And you're already deputy chairman? You're as fast up the greasy pole as young Jason. Mind, you've got a lovely plot. And your tools are all immaculate. Like new.
This is Claire Baxter.
Oh, lovely to meet you, Claire. I'm DCI Blair. I need to make a quick phone call. Just give me a minute, will you?
The question now is whether Jason will revert to his true position within the group, or whether he thinks this is the time to challenge for the leadership.
Joe?
Alma, what can I do for you?
Time to see whether these two top cats are really on the same side. Or is the drive to be the one on top too strong to resist? Oh, for heaven's sake, could we be any more heavy-handed?
I just had a thought. How badly damaged were the tools in Jenna's shed?
It was mostly superficial. The fault was the worst, obviously.
Can you get one of your lads to check them out? I want to know if they're a set, you know, all the same make, with them being relatively new.
You're wondering if the killer used their own fork and took Jenna's away with them, aren't you?
Two minds, but with a single thought. You know me so well.
After all this time, I should do. I'll get someone onto it. I'm just taking some soil samples from around Jenna's plot to compare with what we find under the body.
Cheers, Joe. No, Claire, do you know where Mark is?
He went to the pub for a drink.
He did indeed, but he's not there now. You might have noticed my sergeant looks like he's been punched in the nose. That's because your Mark smacked him one on his way out of the pub.
No. No, that can't be right. Mark would never hit anyone. He's totally non-violent.
Not when he's been spotted on camera running away from the scene of a murder, he's not.
You need to tell us what's been going on, Claire, not wait for us to find out the hard way.
The moment of truth, when the suspects are invited to turn on each other. The unravelling of the detective story so often depends on one person betraying another. It's one of the things this species is particularly adept at.
He went up to the allotment first thing, like always. Oh, he could hardly speak when he got back to the house. He freaked out when he saw Jenna's hut go up in flames. Couldn't see anybody else around. He thought he'd get the blame, so he legged it.
And why would he imagine he'd get the blame?
I don't know.
Oh, I think you do.
Look, it was more than a dozen years ago. We got caught up in the whole animal rights thing, and nobody got hurt.
And that's why Alma stays on top. Because she's female, those moments of killer instinct are dismissed by the lower status males as feminine intuition. But in reality, they're the product of years of experience studying the enemy, the ecology of the environment, and the foibles of the criminal. But she doesn't stop at the moment of revelation. She goes in for the kill.
Not like this morning. Felicity Hall got a lot more than hurt, Claire.
He didn't know anything about that. He thought it was just a fire, kids, or somebody with a grudge against Jenna.
And the powerful lioness effortlessly reclaims her position as leader of the pack. But where will she lead us next?
What does Mike do for a living, Claire?
He works from home. He's a freelance business consultant.
What sort of business?
He helps small and medium-sized businesses develop green strategies.
Very worthy. So why would a former animal activist with an allotment and an eco-friendly business think he'd be a suspect in an arson attack? Come to think of it, what possible reason could Mike have for murdering Felicity?
No reason. We always got on fine with Felicity.
Well, everybody always got on fine with Felicity. Until they didn't.
What are you suggesting, Brian? What's it got to do with you, anyway? People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Meaning what? Ryan? Claire?
What the... Let me through, let me through.
Sure. She's been electrocuted.
Well, we weren't expecting that, were we? And so, as events draw to a climax in the traditional mode of the detective story, the suspense builds. What, we ask ourselves, is that unfamiliar sound? Is it a mating cry? An alarm call? In the wild, hunters have to rely on their tracking skills, their eyesight, their hearing, their knowledge of their environment, and their experience. Luckily for Detective Sergeant Trotter, he has something more sophisticated to count on.
Great bit of kit, this.
Thank the fire chief. He's a bit of a gadget queen, according to his lads.
I suppose it's useful to know where the electric cables go if you're in the business of fire safety. A shame he didn't offer it to Joe when he saw us sticking a spade in the ground.
I can't figure this out at all. I mean, why is there a cable running from one of the huts right along the edge of the allotments? Where's it going?
Was that it? Is that a school on the other side of the fence?
Cranby Primary.
Ah, I think it might be time to report back to the boss.
No, I am not waiting for a warrant, Jason. Not with Joe at death's door.
It's not going to help Joe if the evidence is ruled out because you didn't wait for a warrant.
Don't you tell me what will and won't help Joe. She's my mate, not yours. Wait a minute. Listen. Can you hear a child crying?
No, I can't, and neither can you. That one's as old as the hills.
He's right, Gov. But feel this. Lean against the door, it's roasting. I think it might be about to go on fire.
I think you might be right. We need to check this out. I took the liberty of borrowing an axe off one of them nice firemen. Stand back, Jason. We don't want you getting another wallop in the gob. Oh! Flaming Nora.
No wonder Mark Brennan legged it.
Where is that stupid lass? She must have known about this. I'll bloody have her.
We need evidence, Gov. Claire Baxter's not going anywhere. We should talk to the school first.
You're right, Jason. I never thought I'd hear myself saying that, but you are. And Sparks, get on your radio and find out what the score is with Joe, OK?
Yes, ma'am.
When two groups with very different social structures encounter each other, it's fascinating to observe the mutual misunderstandings and conflicts. We know the head teacher isn't a suspect, by the way. He's been introduced far too late in the narrative.
Right then. My secretary's just fetching Mrs. Digby. What did you say this was all about?
The true alpha female never considers it beneath her dignity to pick off the weakest member of the herd. It's no fun being the baby antelope, or the middle-aged flustered one.
Sparks, you're the finance officer for Cranby Primary, is that right?
Yes, I am.
That means you deal with all the bills?
Among other things, yes.
Mrs. Digby, think very carefully before you answer this. One of my colleagues is in intensive care right now because she accidentally cut through a high-voltage cable that was in a place where no cable should have been. Now tell me, how long have you been involved in stealing electricity from your employer?
Stealing electricity? How do you steal electricity?
You let the local cannabis farm run a cable into your supply so they can light and heat their growing shed.
What? Is this true?
Mrs. Digby, we know Mark Brennan and Claire Baxter have a cannabis farm in their allotment shed. We know they're stealing power from the school supply. You pay the bills. You must have known. So how long has this been going on?
I never intended...
How long?
He's my little brother. They needed the money.
And now one woman's dead and another could be dying. How long?
2 years. Maybe a bit more. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
A bit late for sorry. Sparks arranged for someone to take Mrs. Digby down into town to talk to the drug squad. Jason, with me now.
You think Felicity found out about Brennan's cannabis farm?
It's a hell of a motive if she did. That shed was stuffed to the gills with plants. It must have been bloody obvious in the winter, the only roof with no frost on it.
Well, they'll have had it properly insulated, I expect. They're not stupid.
They might not be stupid, but they're not gangsters either. It won't take much to crack Claire Baxter like an egg.
You don't think you're getting a bit carried away, Cav?
Not even remotely.
What's happening, Brian?
Well, even if I knew, I couldn't tell you, Claire. I'm bound by my professional
Oh,
responsibilities.
he was as pompous as she was.
What is it they say in the old black and white movies, Jace?
The game's up.
That's it. The game's up, Claire. and Digby spilled the beans. We know about the skunk farm, we know where the lecky came from, and we know you're going to jail for a long time.
No, I never knew anything about it till it was too late.
Darling, you are in this up to your perfectly shaped eyebrows. You're an accessory to whatever Mark did this morning. Unless you want to spend the rest of your fertile years behind bars, you need to tell us all you know about that.
He is not a violent man.
He thumped me.
In the heat of the moment, when he was scared.
Well, maybe he was scared when Felicity threatened to expose the fact that he was a scummy drug dealer.
It wasn't like that. Mark just supplies one guy, and he sells it to people like us, not kids.
Oh, nice middle-class drug dealers, is that it? Pop down the farmer's market and pick up a few joints on the way home.
Claire, you're on the hook for what's happened to our crime scene manager. You need to give Mark up. What really happened this morning?
He went down early, like he always does. He likes to make sure everything's running smoothly before anybody else is up and about. And normally he's gone for about an hour, but he came back early.
Did he say why?
When he came out to check the water supply, he saw Jenna's hut on fire. He was afraid he'd get the blame or that somebody would wonder what he was up to so early, so he legged it.
In some species, the males and females pair for life. When it comes to humans, conditions are wildly variable. And that's exactly what our alpha female has come to rely on.
What did he do with the clothes he was wearing?
He put a clean T-shirt on because he was all sweaty. He threw the dirty one in the laundry basket. Now, he's still wearing everything else.
You see, my problem is that's what a smart person who's already disposed of her husband's compromised clothing would say. And I think you're pretty smart, Claire. Smart enough to know you're screwed. He won't be saving anybody's skin but his own, you know.
Oh, shut up, you know nothing about him.
I know men are always the first to throw their partners under the bus.
Speak for yourself. Mark is not like that.
Wise up.
Felicity knew nothing.
You don't know that.
I'll tell you what I do know. Jenna hated her like poison. And Hugo's strapped for cash. If his wife divorces him, he'll have to sell his business to pay her off. Well, that's two for a start.
Now, that's no way to behave, Claire. These people are supposed to be your friends.
Oh. And you've got no room to talk, Brian.
That's right, Brian. Claire was on the point of telling us something about you and Felicity just before Joel was electrocuted.
Felicity and I got on fine. We didn't see eye to eye and everything round here, but you don't murder somebody over a disagreement on the rule book.
You do if you think they're going to accuse you of being a sex pest.
Well, now, Brian.
She's making that up. Well, anybody can see that. She's just chucking muck and hoping some of it'll stick.
She told me you were stalking her.
That's ridiculous.
Is it? She said you kept trying to get her into bed because then you'd be able to control her. That you wouldn't take no for an answer.
Well, you're not taking this seriously, are you, Chief Inspector?
I don't know, Brian. Should I?
This close to the denouement is the time for the game-changing moment. Or is it?
Mum, a word.
You pick your moments, Sparks. What is it?
Could you step outside?
Never interrupt me when I'm in the middle of extorting information, Sparks.
Good news from the hospital. Joel's conscious and lucid.
Really? Well, that's fantastic news.
And there's more.
Oh, it's like Christmas working with you.
They've picked up Mark Brennan. He was trying to hitch a lift on the back road into town.
It's amazing how stupid supposedly smart people can be.
They're bringing him in now.
Tell Jason to join me there.
Will do, man.
Oh, and Sparky, I like your sense of priorities. Come on, love, come on.
Alma.
I can't leave you on your own for 5 minutes.
Sorry. I didn't do it to spy you, you know.
I wouldn't put it past you.
Did you just ring to wind me up, or was there something? Only I think the nurse is about to whip my phone off me.
Just a quick question. Did you get the chance to check out the tools, like I said?
I told Tomo to get onto it. He should have got back to you.
Well, I think your suicide bid threw us all off our stride, love.
Well, they're keeping me in overnight. Will I see you later?
Jason approaching at 6 o'clock. You'll see me later. Now rest, you hear?
Bye.
Jason, time for a bit of leaning, lad. But before we have our fun, we need to speak to a man about a fork.
In the wild, understanding signs and interpreting information can often mean the difference between life and death. If the beta male is ever going to assume power in the group, he has to learn those survival skills. But how generous will the alpha female be with her knowledge?
All right, Tomo.
Well, they didn't go down nearly deep enough with this cable. It's a miracle nobody electrocuted themselves before now.
Tomo, just before she lit up like a Christmas tree, Joe asked you to check out the tools in Jenna's shed.
Oh, sorry, it went right out my head. I was supposed to call you.
No, I'm done. Not this time. So what have you got for me?
Well, the tools in the shed were a matching set. Landlady. Lighter weight for the weaker sex, I do believe.
Watch yourself, Tomo. So they were all the same make?
Aye, all except the murder weapon. That wasn't part of the set. It was a much heavier piece of kit. A generic garden fork, nothing to ID it.
That's very interesting, Tomo. Can you make sure all those landlady tools are photographed and bagged?
Already taken care of. I reckoned if Joe was interested, I probably should preserve the evidence.
Good lad, Tomo. Good lad.
What was all that about?
All in good time, Jason. Watch and learn, son. Watch and learn.
And there are a lot of lessons to learn from an effective leader of the pack. Like the judicious alternation of carrot and stick.
I told you, I've got nothing to say.
Why do people never want to help themselves? Look, Mike, we've got you banged to rights on the cannabis farm. That's cultivation. 5 years, maybe 10 if the CPS decide you're a factory. Supplying, up to 14 years. Theft of electricity, could be another 5. What you did to our crime scene manager, another 5. Where are we up to, Jason?
A lot.
So you're going down. For a long time. The lovely women in your life have already given you up. What happened this morning?
I've got nothing to say.
Please yourself. When I come back after my coffee break, I'm going to charge you with a lot. And believe me, Mark, it's a lot harder to prove your innocence than it is for me to put you in a guilty light. Scummy drug dealer, on the spot, seen, running away from the crime scene, a sympathetic victim who had the right of access to your little enterprise. You are so screwed, son.
Wait. I wasn't the only one there this morning.
I know that. Why don't you tell me all about it? Right, off you go and make the arrest then, Jason.
Don't you want to?
Arrest him, take him back to town and book him into the custody suite. I'll see you there. I've got something to do first.
All right. Thanks, Gov.
So, what made you suspect Brian, the sex pest stalker?
I was using his shed to interview people and I was nosying around his tools.
Because you are a nosy cow, let's face it.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, none of his tools matched. They were all old and worn, the kind of thing you pick up at a car boot sale.
Right.
Except the fork. That looked newer than the rest and it looked a lot lighter too. Landlady brand, not at all manly.
That's my girl. You've always had an eye for things that don't fit.
So, all I needed was to put him on the spot, which the cannabis farmer was only too happy to do. And your lot will find the clothes he was wearing and Robert will be our uncle.
Job done.
For today, at least. Trouble is, when it comes to murder, like Scarlett says, tomorrow is another day.
And so we leave them, fossicking through the undergrowth of human misbehaviour. Thank you for joining us on this journey of revelation. I do hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. There's nothing quite like a good murder.